Gee.
I got scolded there for a minute.
All right. Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting to order.
No, I'll do roll call.
Okay.
Sonia
Here.
and Mr. Sievert
Present.
and Mr. Block
Here.
and John Keller, Kane Feltner, and Ruby Villalobos are not here.
It's my understanding that Mr. Feltner has reached out and requested to be excused from today's meeting. I can't speak for anybody else, but I do know that Mr. Feltner has asked to be excused, so I would make a motion that Mr. Feltner be excused
I'll second.
from tonight's meeting.
Great. I'll second that motion. All right. We'll move on to the approval of January 19th, 2023 minutes. Anybody want to approve that?
I would,
Can we approve?
and I'll second Mr. Block's motion.
Thank you. Now we're going to go on to the discussion of 2023 projects. Marvin, do you want to talk about the driver's ed?
Sure. So what's included in your packet was put together by Solomon. Thank you very much for adding that to the packet. And there's currently in the state of Illinois, there's a driver's education program, which we talked about last meeting. And, yeah, that's okay. Can you not hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. So in the last meeting, we spoke about driver's education program in the state of Illinois. So let me get to the packet. Have you guys had a chance to read that?
Yeah, I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Ken,
I read it.
You did. Sonia,
I
any
did not
questions?
get to read it in entirety, but I'm going over what I didn't.
Okay. So essentially what they do in Illinois is there's a driver's training course that allows all new drivers to have a section within their coursework that talks about police interaction, so that they know how to deal with officers when they're being pulled over, when they know what the commands are coming from the officer, they feel a little safe, they know where the boundaries are, and that's been a really good program for the state of Illinois. It doesn't alleviate problems that still could come, but still is a really good program for children to go through so they have some sense of understanding and how to deal with police officers. It was originally, I forget who wrote it, but I know the person that was responsible for getting it organized was a former police officer that had retired. The other note that I'd like to bring to light is that as I was doing research, I found that here in the state of Ohio, the Ohio Department of Education has put together a program, student interactions with peace officers. Oh, is it still? Okay, thank you. So there is a program that was put together last year, 2022, that is titled Student Interactions with Peace Officers, grades 9 through 12. There's a model curriculum that's been put together. This has been worked on with several of our state leaders. So the CEO of our Ohio State Bar Association, let me see, Department of Public Safety, along with our governor and pretty much every public school sector from an oversight standpoint, I believe, have been involved in writing this curriculum for the state of Ohio. It's just a draft. It's not final yet. but you know, essentially what this program is what we've been discussing. It's a program to introduce children in school to how they should interact with any type of officer, to make sure there's no further escalations with peace officers. So that could be someone that's working in a school, getting pulled over. They have a whole curricula that goes through each of those interactions, the do's and don'ts. And so this is something that is in the works right now, so I don't know how we would pair that alongside of what we're doing. So that's something that we would need to discuss. So I guess the next steps, I know in our, we had, let me see, oh, you emailed it. I know that we were looking at bringing in the senator into one of our meetings to discuss, so this probably should be added and sent out to the senator prior to him coming, and then we can find out if this can be paired along with our thought process on driver's training. So, any other thoughts around it, questions from anyone?
Did you provide the B&B statement as well?
B&B?
Yeah, there's a B&B section
Oh,
that we got
yeah.
provided.
Sorry.
Did you get that?
Yes.
So Solomon provided that, so I thought that was insightful too, to know that there was discussion by the B&B to send to people on how to handle police and traffic stops. So I think it sounds like there's a cohesive approach to this problem that we can all sort of work off of, so.
So, Marvin, I'd like to, maybe in the next couple of weeks, just do a little research to add, because I do think these are amazing programs, but again, if we're talking about the people that usually have not healthy interactions, they can't afford driver's ed. I don't want them to miss. So I'd like to gather enough information to have a conversation, so we can decide if we want to maybe recommend to the mayor to talk to the school to see the possibility. I also want to talk to the Troy Foundation about the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Grant, because that could possibly be an avenue that generational, whether it's poor or no exposure to driving and being pulled over, it might be money. It's a situation. It's about $500 to take driver's ed. Again, and if it's a generational issue, we might be able to help with that. So I just want to add to that, if you don't mind.
Any other thoughts or questions?
May I?
Yes, please.
I think what Marvin was referring to, that is state is working on the curriculum that will be introduced in schools.
Right. Right. I just, again, I want to extend it with some information, some data. I grew up in Illinois, and I don't have time to pull the data up now, but again, having education, access, and practical reality of kids being treated as adults as 16 and 17, I think I can find substantial data that will show that the people that are dying, unfortunately, are in harm's way, don't have any access to driver's ed, and might be in a situation like in our stadium school, as opposed to traditional, that might miss the class. I just want to make sure if we're going to do a recommendation, that it's a strong recommendation that she feels good about as well, as us as well.
Yeah, so this document that's being put forth by Ohio Department of Education, this is targeting 9th through 12th graders in the state of Ohio. So from the way this reads, there's going to be a class that all students have to go through so that they understand the interaction with the peace officer. So I think that class could be rolled into driver's training as well.
Yeah, or just
go ahead.
A light recommendation to make sure the stadium kids are, you know what I mean? All kids
are
get a
included.
chance. Yep.
And I think that this is fantastic. This is wonderful. This is what people need. Additionally, when you have foreigners coming into the U.S. And they're taking their driver's class, they would go through driver's training as well, wouldn't they? Or no?
It depends.
It depends.
Again, yeah. So again, we want to make sure that we're getting all the gaps, because that's usually the people that are dealing with, these situations. I mean, it's hard to stereotype, but we just want to make sure that everybody gets access and exposure.
So that's all I had on that. Any other thoughts or questions? Uh-oh.
You got some thoughts?
So I did some research
You
into
did.
this over the course of, since our last meeting.
Awesome.
And 4508.022 talks about this curriculum, the model curriculum draft that you found,
Mhm.
which I'm aware of. I became aware of it through our school resource officer at the high school, actually.
Nice.
But it talks about the Director of Public Safety adapting model curriculum based upon that model policy for driver's ed, and that
Okay.
having to be placed into driver's ed. I think, Salome, did you provide them with the 5-minute video produced by OSP?
No,
The link to that?
You wouldn't be able to click on that link, but it is attached to the BNB, that section that talks about.
What did you, if you have pulled over video?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I talked to, he's the Regional Director of Driver's Ed for AAA for this region, and he's a retired police officer. I'm sure Mr. Sievert remembers Officer Pat Brown. And he provided me with that video, and Salome actually found it through the driver's ed training information.
Yeah.
So that's something that AAA, if you pay to go to the AAA driver's ed, is a part of their curriculum. Right now, I think there's still, most of the classroom is all online, so unfortunately, there's not a lot of online information about interacting with a police officer, but, it's supposed to also, if it's in person, spur conversations and discussions about how to interact with a police officer during the class.
Yeah.
So I think that from what we've seen, that there's headway on
Yep.
this. I also asked our high school SRO to go more into what he teaches at the high school. And he teaches as a part of the health classes, 4 courses. And those 4 courses, he has 3 PowerPoint presentations, and the other one he just kind of does based upon his training. So the 4 courses are a mental health class that he teaches in conjunction with Tri-County Mental Health, their educator. He teaches a drug class that's specific to drug identification and the effects of drugs. And this, of course, goes along with their curriculum taught by their certified teacher. And a sexting and technology course, that's one of the big ones that we deal with a lot in the high school and junior high, is the sexting, unfortunately. And then his last class that he teaches is related to alcohol. And he kind of gave me an outline of what he does in that alcohol class. And so he first presents the students with a 12-question class to see what they know about alcohol, and then they discuss the answers, they go over the quiz. And then he talks about the clues of somebody driving impaired that officers are looking for when they're out on patrol and seeing the clues. He explains the steps in a traffic stop, and once the traffic stop is initiated, he talks about the clues that the officers are looking for when they're talking to them: slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, fumbling with their wallet, things like that, that pretty much every of our patrol officers has a very good handle on, or should. And then they talk about the field sobriety test, and they actually demonstrate the field sobriety test on a student. We have the beer goggles that are supposed to simulate being under the influence of alcohol, and they wear them, and then other students can volunteer or try to do the field sobriety test while wearing the beer goggles. So, like I said, the school resource officer is aware of that model curriculum.
Yeah.
There have been discussions in the high school about that. They're pressed for time, though. I mean, they've got so many mandates. I think the discussion was that it makes sense to have the officer to present that class. There were some discussions about where do we present the class? Is it government class? Is it health class? Where would they present it? So I think it's in the works, but it's really the school board's and the school superintendent's decision, and not necessarily ours.
Right.
So I got a question.
Unless the Ohio would mandate it.
Right.
Draft.
Which it seems like it's going down that road, which is wonderful.
So, what grade levels are they thinking about presenting this?
The health department, the health class is mostly a freshman class, and some sophomores take it, but I think everybody's mandated to take health class, so it's either your freshman or sophomore year. I asked
the school resource officer, Officer Hook, about the stadium program, and he stated to me that that's mostly juniors and seniors down there in the stadium program. I don't know if you're aware of that or if you've heard that.
I
And
think
so-
it just depends on probably partly what's going on with the kid.
Yeah, and so he kind of understood that most of the students down there have already attended health class, so they would get that in their health class, probably their freshman year, maybe their sophomore year. So,
Did he, and then maybe you didn't ask the question, which I understand, did he give any indication of a benefit of those kids going back through, or a concern of, again, you know, you're freshmen, you're already probably at risk, and by the time you do get over there, you're a junior or senior, any benefit to?
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of contact with the stadium program unless he's called over there specifically for a reason, is how he explained what he does. I didn't ask him about the benefit of reintroducing that class to the stadium course. Again, you know, our school resource officer program, there's a lot of cooperation there. We don't necessarily, you know, dictate any kind of teaching that we do. We're usually invited to teach. For example, I have 2 accident reconstructionists on the department, and they recently taught in one of the science courses. I don't think it was a physics course, but it was one of the science courses that they went over the formulas we use in accident reconstruction. So,
Right.
and that was an invite from that teacher to come in. But the invite from the health class is kind of a standing kind of invite that is the regular duties of the school resource officer.
Do you feel any possible validity if there was a relationship built with the stadium kids and that SRO as an inviting? My opinion, and I kind of want you to tell me if I'm off, they're potentially going to spend more interactions with at-risk kids out in our town more than the traditional kid that's walking past them in the high school, right? So wouldn't it be possibly diffusing and creating more of an inclusive, diverse community to be able to get those kids before they're in trouble, so to speak? I know it's a catch-22.
I can agree that we're probably more likely to deal with students that are in the stadium program than, you know, the students that are not in the stadium program. But as far as, you know, suggesting curriculum, you know, that's a discussion I'd have to have with the school. Or, you know, and that you guys could have with the school.
I guess for us, because we give recommendations, I don't want to be recommending something if it isn't logical for you guys. I'm thinking the more positive affirmations, touches that they get with those kids prior to something negative could potentially, again, create community, create bridges, and maybe save, you know, some young people from predicaments that we're up here trying to figure out what to recommend.
So to kind of explain the high school SRO program, it's my understanding that a lot of their hours at the high school, and the junior high does this too, are counseling hours. Now, they're not trying to take the place of the school psychologist or a school counselor by any means, but they do have an open door policy during certain hours that if you want to stop in and talk to the officer about anything, it could be a situation at home, it could be just your interest in becoming a police officer. It's just a variety of things where we encourage the students to come in and speak to the officer.
Okay. Yeah. So then they would have to literally go across and come
Across
back
the street
in. And it's just kind of foreign at that point, right?
Yeah.
So again, we're just trying to get solid recommendations. We want to be helpful. We don't want to waste time and, you know, recommend things that might not be logical.
And I generally don't know how much, I don't know if the stadium kids can just walk across the street when they want, or if they'd have to ask the teacher down there.
I don't think that they can. I just know that subculture, it's kind of foreign to do something like that. So if we can switch that culture and just provide some time, and really, however the school sees, you know, they would decide how that time would go. But I'll keep doing some research. Thank you for that.
That is a good idea.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
No.
I just appreciate you doing that extra homework.
Yeah,
I do
we
too,
appreciate it.
yeah, thank you very much for that.
Good information, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the minutes be modified to reflect that Mr. Keller is in attendance. He walked in just a few minutes after we started, and so we
I'll
should
second
make
that.
that appropriate motion that Mr. Keller is here.
Thank you, I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Yeah, you, sure.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye. I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for being tardy.
Well,
For some
maybe that's
reason-
something we should talk about at some point in time. 6:15 is kind of an odd time, and I almost forgot. I thought it was 6:30
I
myself.
had 6:30 on my
I
mind.
think I
Showed
had
up,
too last
so
time.
perhaps 6 or 6:30 might be better to discuss at some point in time.
If you would like to make a motion and second.
Make a motion. Make a motion to move to 6:30 for meetings?
I'm good at 6:15. Y'all just need to check your clock. Excuse my...
We have one no, and we have-
Too much work here. It's 6:15.
Well, you're not chair anymore, so we can, Kenneth.
We could do 6 work for you, or does it take time to get here?
I think 6:15 is pleasant for me, so we
Okay.
can leave it there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
You
I'm
go.
not trying to upset the apple cart. We just have to remember it's 6:15 then.
Yes.
Okay,
So, no motion.
no motion then. If it becomes a issue though, John, because you got a lot of things going on, especially, we can switch it.
6:15 is fine,
It's just a weird time.
It is.
I put it in my phone for 6:30 for some reason, but I will not be tardy again.
You're completely fine. So we're gonna move on to the Ohio
I'm usually
Historical.
early.
Yes.
We'll move on to the Ohio Historical Marker. Do you wanna give an update on that? Can you do that, or?
I did, I reached out to Mr. Kennedy, and he said that he's almost finished finalizing the documents he's been gathering for us, and then some point next week or in 2 weeks, he'll contact us, and we will have to just draft the language that will be attached to the application. And the due date to apply for the marker is May 1st.
Thank you, it's solid. She did the update because she's done such amazing work on this project, and I am very, very grateful for that. Okay,
We all are.
perfect. Yes. Does anybody want to add anything in regards to the historical marker?
Thank you, Salome, for the work you've done.
Yeah, thank you very much
Thank
for
you
that.
very much, appreciate
Very,
it.
very
We
much.
all should be thanking Mr. Kennedy, not me.
And Mr.
because
Kennedy as well.
He's doing really,
He's
yeah.
doing, yes.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to the Mayflower plaque. Todd, do you want to talk about it?
We talked about it, I've talked to the city a little bit about it. I think Mr. Kennedy's going to be involved again. I just think they're looking for some confirmation that before we approach them, that, that was an issue, and then they're going to talk to, I will talk to Tony Scott. I have no problem talking to Tony. So I think it's still kind of in the process. They haven't really formalized anything, but it's known about, and
So Mr. Kennedy is looking for historical data to support that this would have been...
Right.
Okay.
We just didn't want to make the claim and then
Yeah,
not
for sure.
have occurred. But Ms. Phillips was pretty adamant, so I think there's some discussion that needs to be had against some community
Mhm.
people. And
I don't know, I don't think we're at the motion phase, but I would like to consider, after we get all the information together, to perhaps, kind of do somewhat of a survey to community, that if this is something that they want to have up. I'll be honest, it's a lot.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know that, here's the deal, it's a private property owner.
Yeah.
So the reality is,
Yeah.
this is only something that was seen and then brought to the committee to say, would another private property owner like to...
Right, so what I was
possibly
trying to do, Todd, is ask other African Americans and other citizens
Oh, you
how they
mean whether
felt
the
about this,
impact.
that's all.
Oh,
Because
I like
again,
it.
it's heavy, it's a lot, and everything doesn't always have to be in a negative connotation. And when I read it, honestly, I gotta lay it down and gasp for breath a little bit. And so I would like to advise my mayor on things that she's not gonna have to deal with controversy and stuff later. I would like to say, hey, this is what your city wants, and we've done our due diligence, that's all.
I think the
proper process at this time with that particular action item would be to sort of table it, gather our thoughts, it was brought up as a discussion, let's validate that, let's make sure, because even when I brought it up as a, I said that when we first brought it up, that, I want to make sure this isn't offensive to people. I observed it in Columbia, Missouri. I thought it was like you said, I had to read it twice and it kind of made an impact, but there are different, it may impact people in a different triggering way, and we definitely don't want to do anything that would do that. So I would say that we would take this item off of the monthly agenda, or whatever we do now, 6 weeks agenda, or I don't know, how often are we meeting now?
Can I say something real
Sure.
quick? So when you brought this up last meeting, like most, and this is just, I'm just going to speak from my heart about this. So when most black people are met with, people were hung, in that park, or black slaves were sold at that courthouse, it gives you this, this really horrible feeling. However, I think that if you have a private property owner that wants to put a sign up that says, "Lee Sweden, forget, never again, that we don't treat people this way," that's something I definitely could get behind. I love the idea, and I think that's something that we should put up in buildings where we are right now in this country. We have governors who want to restrict educational, like, it's now illegal in some county to talk about famous black baseball players from the 20s. Roberto Clemente. That is fact. So I think if someone wants to put this up in their building, I would like to shake their hand and tell them this is beautiful, and we should have more people who feel heartfelt comments toward diversity and inclusion and being normal.
The only point I want to make, it may be that building isn't I don't know, nobody has talked to the private property owner. So
no, I thought you did.
No, we had brought this as an idea, I brought it up to here. Where it stands right now is there was some discussion, before we move further, let's validate it, let's make sure that everybody's okay with it, and then we'll approach the private property owner. And he may say, I don't have any interest in it, and we could go to, I'm sure there are different places where we can memorialize things. But that's where we are right now. This didn't originate from a person who said, I want to put it up. He had, a private property owner could put up whatever he wanted, he could put it up. Right. This was a question, I observed this probably, I think the week before I came to that meeting, said, hey, I took a picture of this, what do you guys think? Is it something that would have application?
I'm sorry, can I get the background? So where is this right now?
That is in Columbia, Missouri, at the Columbia Theater, is what it's called.
So we also have to be sure that the intentions of when people put things up are the same intentions of what we're doing, right? You don't want to get into a fad where everybody starts throwing up stuff so they look woke or relevant, too. And all we can do is advise. So this, I agree, should be tabled, because it's not her building, Madam Mayor. I don't think you're able to put this plaque up. We can't advise you to do so, so I will do the motion to table, if anybody wants to second.
I don't know what we're tabling.
Well, he wanted to table this, take it off the agenda.
I just want to take it off of the agenda so we don't just keep discussing until we validate where the next steps are. I don't know that it's going to disappear. It just doesn't, I don't know that it needs to be an action item every month.
Unless you want it to be.
One of it makes sense. Todd, if you have a relationship, it makes sense to me that if you wanted to say to that person, this is an idea, at that point,
let's do it that way. Let's just table it from here. I think I've warranted trust from everybody here. We'll talk to people and we'll see, if it becomes, we'll deal with it. I think there's still way in the planning stages, and it was probably just premature. So I think I'll wear the prematurity of it. It sounds like this board is somewhat supportive of the concept, so let's wait a little bit, see where we are, and then we'll revisit it at a more appropriate time. Does that sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Okay.
For me, it would just be, hey, give them the thought, and if they decide to do that, they could come to us. If they even felt need to do that, there wouldn't even be need to do that, I wouldn't think.
No, they're really, yeah. I mean, the more concept I had is really, I think the one Sonia was at, which was, how does this, I'm obviously not African American, I don't know how that would affect. Like you said, I went to Charleston a bunch of times, I saw the market and where things are, and that's gonna affect me different than it might affect a person of color, and I didn't mean, before I explored anything, that was really the purpose, was to say, hey, is this something that is offensive, or something that is historically accurate, or something that is, we should explore. So, I like the idea, I am beholden to the idea, I think it makes a good deal, and if you guys just trust me, we'll take our steps, and if it works, it works, if it doesn't, I'll come back and convey that thought.
Just say HRC has nothing to do with that.
No, right, it probably was, it really was just brought up as a concept. So.
You was just kind of gauging our kind of perspective on it, what we thought. And I think, like Marvin, it's a good idea to, investigate it, see if they're interested. And actually, if they are, I think we need to remember history.
I'll tell you one thing that actually is fact and has been checked. There was an African-American man named Robert Kenny who actually came, and I'm not going to read the whole story for sake of time, but he moved to Troy, and he was responsible for saving people from the 1914 flood. That's kind of beautiful. There were also some Caucasian Americans that lived in Troy that also drowned to their death, but got several people out of the flood. So there are, again, stories of diversity, inclusion, tragedy, heroism that I think our city should promote. We do have facts behind it, and it's just really reflects the heart of our community.
We have a great community.
We have a great community, and that's why I hesitate and want to be very factual, right, of what we put up. We don't want to create drama when we don't need to. We have enough in the world, so again, we want to be, drama's just...
I wouldn't say that this is, I think, and this is just from my own personal thought process, again, I think this is a beautiful thing to put up, and like if you were to tour any place in Germany where Hitler had his reign, there's memorials everywhere.
No, I'm glad that we're
blessed
to live in a community where we keep uncovering stories during civil rights that don't reflect the rest of the United States in civil rights. And so I will not let that factual history not also be shared. We're blessed. I mean, and there are places that it was horrific as well.
Yeah.
So again, we'll move on. Are we good to move on now?
I think we're
Any
good.
Comments?
I think we beat the dead horse.
Yes. Motion to...
To what?
Motion that you're tabling the item.
So then we'll move to table the Mayflower plaque item 4C from further agenda discussion.
I second that.
Now we'll go on to the walking map. QR walking map.
We need to vote on that.
I'm so sorry. Yes, got to call a vote. You're right. Apologize.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, now we're going to go on to the walking map. Does anybody have an update on that? And normally would be me. Marvin, have you worked on that at all?
No, I think we need to get together and work on that.
Yeah, so the last update, again, we had created a binder with significant places that we felt that we were going to create a map to put QR codes on. Marvin was going to work on the QR codes. And so again, I think we just need to get that subcommittee back together and have a meeting.
I think the last place we were, you had a folder
Yes.
that had a lot of information in it, and we were gonna go through that and then pair up different locations here in Troy that people could go visit through a walking tour. So I think we were gonna look at a radius of downtown area and see what we could include in a walking tour. And then I looked at, like a QR code plaque that we could put up on like a home if they would allow us. So that's gonna take some money. So that's another discussion. After we figure out what to get, then we could figure out how to fund it. And,
We have a yearly budget still, so we'll have to talk about
Okay.
over that budget or not. Okay.
but that's something that we can, I think we should get together, talk through it, and
Okay.
involve Salome in it as well, and then we can
Yeah,
invite anyone else who'd like to talk about it.
okay.
We've been working on that for the last 2.5 years,
Yes.
and it needs to be finished.
I agree.
So, if anyone else would like to join us, I can send out information on what we have so far, what the thought process is, and what we like to do. And then if you'd like to jump in that and help us out, we would greatly appreciate that. Or if you don't want to, that's fine as well, but.
Yeah, send me some information.
Okay, I'll send it out to Salome, and then if you would forward it out to everyone, that would be fantastic.
I think that's our last hands-on thing. And then we will get back to recommendations. All right. Commission member comments? All right, public comment?
Question?
Sure, yeah, come on up.
I'm Dee Dee Wisman from Troy, and I have a question about what is the notion about the walking tour? What's its theme? Historical? What?
The walking tour is supposed to be, places, there should be historical places here within Troy where, African-American events happened.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
what we're looking for.
Okay. And another question, this is my ignorance about programs in the community or something about, what's the stadium business?
So it's
What's
an
that?
alternative school of sorts for kids at the high school. So it does have a more professional name. The nickname is the Stadium School. They happen to be housed under the stadium. Unfortunately, I cannot rattle off the professional name that they
They
have.
have an IEP, correct?
No,
No.
it's a variety.
Okay.
It's for whatever reason, you just aren't able to be in a traditional classroom.
Okay, yeah, I understand that those kinds of programs in other places. so-
Yeah.
Okay, now
yeah.
I got
We
it.
used to call them alternative schools, like in bigger
Yeah,
cities.
yeah.
So maybe this is like a little sub-alternative school for Troy.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You're welcome, and that was not ignorant at all. Thank you for asking the question. All right. Madam Mayor, you have anything you want to add? All right, well then we will adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.